Since we're talking about you,
Yes. Jim Soria. So,
so the question is, if you have any objection to this being continued for a month while we join, go back to Planning Commission, correct? Is that what we're discussing? Going back to Planning Commission? Yeah.
Where they discussed it, said, they kind of let it in.
We closed the public hearing, and there would need to be a public hearing on it, and then it's a change. I guess my question is that I'm assuming you're going to, after getting a zone change, you're going to propose some sort of site plan for the area, and that still needs to be approved.
correct, eventually.
Yeah, so I think he can be doing that. Yeah. Possibly what we could do tonight is to give him the zone change, approve the ordinance, subject that we'll recall it and amend the zone change if the other property owner wants to apply in the next month.
And that doesn't
That would
hurt our
give an indication that the
chances.
zone change has been granted, so we can move forward with site planning, but it's not going to really affect his site planning at all, which he still needs to bring before the town.
Explain one more time how we would handle this next month at the Planning Commission.
It needs to be in an amended zone change.
Okay.
So you had a public hearing on rezoning a certain parcel of property to a different zone. It did not include that piece of property. As much as we did discuss it, I know it was at the planning commission.
Yeah.
Technically, the public has the right to give feedback on an amended or expanded zone change. So it would, we wouldn't charge, I don't think, another zone change application fee.
That's what I wanted to find
We
out.
would just consider it a combined zone change.
Uh-huh.
And an amended, expanded zone change. But we probably need to have a public hearing at the planning commission, and then we can approve it next meeting.
But we can go
So
ahead tonight.
The motion would be to approve the ordinance with the caveat that we will consider an amended zone change to add that parcel in the future if that property owner applies to join with it.
Okay.
And we would have to renotice everything, but that shouldn't be a problem at all.
Yeah, that way they get the zone change. If
They
they're
get
not-
the zone
they're not
change
waiting-
tonight, and then you
they're not
start
waiting
your
on
site
anything.
plan.
Okay.
We're just leaving it open so that the other property
Okay.
owners can join in. And I think I feel most comfortable that way because then we are not, we take the zone change that's happening with them, all their acreage, and the zone change that's happening with the substandard law, and we're not violating our ordinance by rezoning something that doesn't meet the minimum size requirement.
So should we put it, just to prevent dragging feet, put a date? Like the date we have to post it, and go with that, the date they have to decide, this other lot.
We decided the planning commission.
Sounds like they're ready to go.
Yeah.
But they can't drag their feet. I agree. Yeah.
That it ensures that you get your zone change that no longer has a problem. It's
Crystal,
It isn't gonna affect anything Jim does passes tonight. If the amendment fails, he still has.
So that's not gonna leave it open.
Let's not give them until March's meeting, let's give them until April's, because Crystal informs me that they would have to come in and have everything ready and applied by tomorrow.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it would have to be tomorrow if they were going to make it for next
So
planning
make it
commission.
April. If you want,
Okay.
Misty, if you want to give them that opening where they don't have to pay a separate
Right.
zone change application fee or anything like that, that it be submitted in time to be on
It just
the
prevents.
April planning commission and April town council agendas.
Okay.
I guess my question is, how come we have to pay a zone change fee, but they don't?
Well, that was because when they came in last month, we discussed with them that because of their problem, that the town might very well just go ahead and rezone it And if the town decided to rezone it, then they would not have to pay a fee because the town was doing it.
Yeah,
But-
it
Okay.
may seem a little unfair, but it's also beneficial to you and the property.
Well,
There's
well-
setbacks and everything else you have to do
Right.
for that resolution process.
Actually, doesn't he have to consent to that zone change? So maybe you and the Berries can get together and work out that compensation.
He,
Maybe.
actually, if the town were to make its own motion and rezone the property, that it doesn't matter if they agree or not.
Well, we have to, yes, we have to comply with our own ordinance, but we don't have to charge ourselves a zone change application fee. And the equivalent of what we're doing here, we would have to do it ourselves to clean it up, so we don't have this little island spot.
Right.
We're just trying, and even then, I would say, hey, city, we can't do something that violates our own ordinance.
Mhm.
So this helps us and them, but I do like the point that Paul makes, maybe it's worth a discussion with your neighbors as to
Yeah.
something that's fair and reasonable.
Okay.
All right,
So,
Okay.
yeah.
all right. Misty, I'm going to let you make
Go
the
with that?
motion since you, wait,
Public.
if there's any more, oh, well, hold on just a minute, Misty. Even though we had a public hearing on this 2 weeks ago at the Planning Commission meeting, I do have on the agenda that if the public has any comment, I will let you make any comment. Anyone out here have a comment about this rezone? Cameron,
Hey, it's Cameron Spendlove. My comment's not about the rezone, because I had been thinking also about that small property, and I believe there is a couple other small properties that would also be in the same, or could be in the same situation anytime. I thought another solution to that, the problem that we're having because it's a small lot, would maybe be modifying our ordinances slightly so that if we did have a piece that was surrounded on two sides, even if it wasn't an acre, that we allow that change to happen. So that was my only comment was.
okay. Well, Heath was nodding his head and he agreed with you, Cameron, about modifying the ordinance.
That's not uncommon to
Okay.
have an exception to minimum size requirements if bounded by the zone they're seeking on like two sides, multiple sides as an exception in some cities' ordinances.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion among the town council? All right, Misty.
Yeah, I do have some discussion before we go on, but I can do it after she makes a motion or,
No, go
I can do
ahead
it
with whatever
before.
what you want to say.
you know, I didn't get a chance to attend because I wanted to make sure that we didn't have three of us at the planning board commission, but I did listen to the discussion. And when I looked at it, one of the issues that I listened to the discussion on is we kind of know what the application may look like and what may be going in to it. But when we're looking at zone changes, you have to look at all the uses going into that zone and not what the particular use is going to be proposed, because once you approve the zone change, then with the project, and then all those uses fit in there, not what was being considered. So in this particular situation, we had the residential areas in the neighborhood. It creates an issue that I look at our zone code, and we just don't have this in the toolbox to deal with it. Some other communities create different type of commercial zones. So they have different levels of commercial zones depending on the intensity, C1s, commercial limited. So we had some other zones that had uses that would be more compatible going in next to a neighborhood. That we're not dealing with one zone, zone fits all. And that's what I think we're looking at in this process. In this particular case, it's fortunate because it works out, but we're going to come along where we're going to have another case where we're going to have a conflict between residential and commercial, and we just don't have the right tools to deal with it.
Question? Just a quick question. My name is Skip Boysnall. Can't you handle that with a conditional use permit?
Not all uses require a conditional use permit. So,
Right.
so you could have an incompatible use that would be incompatible with the neighborhood, and it doesn't require a conditional use permit.
But could it work in that?
Yeah, our current commercial zoning does allow for conditional use permits, and it's also on a gas station, a motel would be 2 uses.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion among the town council? Okay. All right,
Okay. So, I motion to approve ordinance 2022-02, zone change for parcel V1 from rural residential to commercial. With the, use your word, caveat that we are going to give the opportunity for parcel B90B-1 to also join this as an amended ordinance at a later date, which is proper noticing for the April 13th, 2022 planning zone meeting.
Second.
all right, we have a motion to approve the rezone, subject to an amendment in April, and it has been seconded by Leroy. Leroy.
Yes.
Me, Jean, yes.
Gene, yes.
Paul?
And yes, after looking at this project, I think it complies with our general plan. And I also think after looking at and weighing purposes of Utah statute for zoning, I think it warrants a change to commercial. So I will say aye.
You will say what?
Aye, yes.
Aye, okay. All right. So, number 7 you have received your rezone, and we expect that there will be an amendment later on in the month of April by your neighbors. Okay. All right, item number 8, which is discussion and possible approval of ordinance 2022-01, an ordinance revoking any prior ordinances delegating or removing powers, duties, B 4021, and reaffirming, restating, and making the town subject to the powers, duties, and functions of the Virgin Town Mayor expressly delineated in the aforementioned section of the Utah Code. Discussion among the town council members.
I think we asked for this because we wanted to make sure that that any outlying things that the other mayor did that might not have complied with this, that it was clear to the incoming mayor that we wanted the mayor to abide by the state law.
Stepping backwards on it is the major
That-
Like every government or body, things get added, things have to get taken away. So this just puts things back to us.
And why can't we address those when they come up.
We can't, all we're doing is stating that this council will abide by the state laws.
Or actually, I think it does more. What it does is because if there was an ordinance that was passed, let's say that you're not aware of right now, but it was passed and it gave the previous mayor, Mayor Spindler, powers and duties that expanded his duties or contracted its duties, that was done in accordance with state law. So it's not like you're doing something that's not in accordance with state law. You're not violating the state law by allowing that it's there. What I would like to do is, if there is such an ordinance, to address it at the time that it's discovered, so we can see if it's worth keeping or not. This elimination of something that's speculative, that's carte blanche, just does not make sense to me.
So if the mayor had $100,000 spending limit from council in 1986, the mayor says she's going to do that, and council has to say, give them those people that.
Well, I think under the way the statute reads, that's already,
That's the, I'm just saying, this puts everything back where we work as a team.
It's not just previous mayor Spindler, there's also previous mayor Densley, there's also previous mayor Rowe, and we keep going back on and on and on. That's where the point is coming from, is that it just is a regular.
It has nothing to do with the new mayor. It has to do to make sure that whatever happened in the past is gone, and whatever happens in the future, we abide by the law.
I guess we have a different view, because I want to see what those particular grants were or what was taken away before I make a decision. I'm not going to make a decision on something speculative. Just does not make sense to me.
No, I was just gonna say, the other thing you need to look at is, Paul's presumption in your statement is that, all delegations of power, to the mayor, extracurricular from the state code was done properly. I don't know if it was.
Yeah, fair enough. I understand that, yeah.
And delegation of power needs to be done by ordinance, by the legislative body, in a public meeting. And I'm not saying that there was or wasn't in that, but what happens if the current mayor says, well, I saw Mayor so-and-so doing it, and the council knew that Mayor so-and-so was doing it. And I'm not saying Mayor Spindler, Mayor Grow, Mayor Densley, whoever it was, were those proper delegations of authority or not. This just restates and reaffirms that the mayor has all the powers that the state law says the mayor has in a 5-member form of council government.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but if there's a grant out there that wasn't done according to statute, then it's not a proper grant. So it's an illegal grant.
It isn't, but what if the current mayor relies upon it? Because past mayors have done it.
Therein lies the point. We can spend days, months, years going back to all the town meeting minutes trying to figure out what was given, what was taken from the mayor, where we reset and then there is some condition, we bring it to council, and add these things back here. You get a carte blanche, you stick to a spreadsheet, and you work together, which is the whole rule. As Mr. Swinson said right there, is let's see the reset, let's reset. It's the same as,
You want to move on to public comments?
Sure.
I don't necessarily see it as totally stripping. I don't see it as stripping, I honestly do not. I see it as the same thing as we are doing with our capital facilities. We are finally starting looking at what we are going with it. There is no, I don't necessarily see it as shooting. I hate that word invoking. I hate that word that it's there. But I feel like there's things that it's just, it is honestly just a way to start clear, start fresh. There's so much everyone has so much flying around that this right here just sets it and approves it and says, this is where we are, everybody knows this is home plate, this is where we start. So that's my take on it.
Any public comment?
We have a letter in the packet from Norma Wood.
Oh, yes, we do.
Speaking of this, she says, it's one letter that says, why is this ordinance necessary? Which ordinances that previously delegated to or removed from mayor, how would you the function of either? Which is the one that holds.
Any other public comment?
Kent Peterson. I'm going to swear to be the dumb one in the room and say, I'd really like to know what's going on. I'd really like to know what you're really trying to do, why this, what this means. I'm suspicious, but I don't know if I should be. Does that make any sense to you? Leroy?
Sure.
What are you trying to do? Just talk in my terms, kindergarten terms or whatever they are, and tell me what, or I don't know, but I get a feeling that it's, maybe this is the way politics works, but I get a feeling that somebody's afraid of something and so why are we doing this? Why are you proposing this? I just don't understand it. I wish somebody would put it in layman's terms so that I understand why you're proposing this at this time and what you're afraid of might happen.
Anyone else?
Monica Boca, I second that. And Claudia Anderson, I third that.
I don't want to debate that point, but I do want to say, why wouldn't we be proposing this? Again, it's a foundation, it's a reset. We should be doing this every 4 years. Every year in planning and zoning, we reset, we elect a new chair and vice chair. We do that every year for a reason. We have elections every couple of years for a reason, for resets. That's important. There are a lot of things in the past. I've been attending meetings for 15 years, and the last 10 years probably haven't missed more than a half dozen. And there's things that have happened in those meetings, and then I see things outside that have been beyond the bounds that I thought were decided in those meetings. And I would say, hey, this is a time to reset. This will be a foundation that we can come together and work as a town. And this is the council, this is the committee that will do that. Thank you.
Anyone else before we move on?
Now I'm upset. Kent Peterson, there's got to be some specific things here that you're afraid of, and that you're afraid that they'll come up somewhere and it's going to cause some problems, and you're cherry picking by doing the whole thing instead of saying what you're afraid of. What are you afraid of?
Wyatt Lee. I really don't think that it's as much of a fear thing. For me, how I read it personally is maybe some people on the council, or I know some people in the town feel like previous administrations didn't represent them as well, or thought that some of the previous administrations might have done some things that were a little fishy. And so I feel like this is a really good spot to come back to and know that maybe these things are out there that allow our elected officials some leeway in doing things that
maybe the townspeople don't approve of. And I think that this is a good way to bring it back to square one.
Thank you. Okay. If there's no more comment, we will move on for a motion and vote. So who's going to make a motion? Okay.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-01.
Second.
All right. We have a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-01 by Jean Garate and a second by Leroy. So we will do a roll call vote. Misty?
Yeah.
Leroy?
Yes.
Jean, I abstain. Paul?
I'm going to trust I'm very guarded about the power of us as a council. So if something's out there, I'm going to trust the mayor to do the right thing. And if she doesn't, then we're going to deal with it at the council. I don't think this ordinance is necessary. I'm going to vote no.
Okay. So the vote is 3 ayes, 1 no. And there is a code section that applies to votes revoking or reinstating power to the mayor. And you may have to look this up for us and put this up on the screen. If you would go to the state code. And I'll tell you the code when you get there. It's 10-3B, 403. Yeah. Is that not right? It should be 10-3B, 403, subsection 2.
Yeah, I'm not. There's no subpart B, A or B in chapter 3.
Isn't it
10-3B, I mean,
403.
10-3B is referred to throughout this whole ordinance.
403, parens 1, parens, B, parens, I think you're referring to.
No, you haven't found it?
I'm here. Which subsection? 40.
403.
What number? 403?
Mm-hmm.
What number at 403?
Should be subsection 2.
I guess
Section
it's
two, which one?
403 sub 2.
That's what I said.
Yeah, paragraph. parens 2.
10-3B, 403, subsection 2. I swear I looked it up and wrote it down before we came. Are you not finding it? Do you have it there, Paul?
Yep, I haven't.
in the future here as we move forward, maybe we can have a permitted with conditions. In the future here as we move forward, maybe we can have get those written instead of just straight permitted.
Okay, never mind. Then I'll just have Paul, okay, I was gonna say, I'll just have Paul read it.
Plan. So really, as long as you're following building code, there's really not much they can do to say no on that.
The zoning requirements.
So there's zone requirements, but unless we
You need to
make those
just a little
general
bit so
and broad enough that everything, I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot until we get regulations set for each one.
This as far as prohibited with conditions, we're gonna just take.
I know, that's why I
So we
said in
don't
the
want
future.
any
it's either
Whatever's
not
going on
done,
the screen.
Right.
I'll just
specific
have Paul
ones.
read it.
But right now, just, if we're saying permitted, the conditions of.
How are you showing the documents up here? If,
Well,
Computer's
well, I think
doing
Gene,
fine.
Gene, you said it correctly, so.
Simply put, the vote bill, it says adopting an ordinance under section, subsection 1BI, removing from or reinstating the mayor power duty or function provided in the section 10.104 requires the affirmative vote of A, the mayor, and a majority of all other council members, or all council members except the mayor. With the mayor abstained, and Paul votes no, the motion fails.
It's only related to 104.
so,
This ordinance addresses both powers in 104 and 402. She's already that one too.
no, I don't want to read for it. So, this fails, and I just wanted to say one thing to everybody, which was, as a lawyer, reading the state code, never for a single minute did I think I had any power other than what the state code says. So when I saw this ordinance, it's like, I never thought I had any other power than what is said here. So I didn't understand the need for this because I was already going to comply with exactly what this was. Just so you know. So I think the next item on the agenda, which is number 9, where we're talking about amending the procurement policy, will show you that where and that we, to show that we can all work together. This next item on the agenda, number 9, what we're proposing here with the procurement policy, I think is going to show that we can work together. Because what is proposed here in number 9 is, and Heath and I talked about this, and Heath wrote this ordinance, and as you can see, it is providing for the town to do something the town's never done, as far as I know, something the town has never done in the past, which is to assign people to be department heads, which the state code, the code that was just there, that where we were looking at the powers of the mayor, somewhere in that, I don't remember exactly what section it is. It provides that we can determine people to be assigned members of town council to be department heads. So part of this procurement policy, this procurement code that I was proposing that we change would allow the town to, for me, to assign department heads. And so if I was to assign department heads, and Paul to be a head of one department, you to be a head of one department, me to be a head of a department, and Leroy one, and Misty one, then that shows that I am releasing actually some power and sharing power, so to speak, and trying to work together. So I see this code as this ordinance here as actually achieving what we were talking about for the town. Now, I don't expect us to vote on this tonight. I wanted us to discuss it and maybe take some comment from the public. And maybe we have this next month as a vote, because we will need to talk about the term, what's in here. And if you guys are in agreement and you like the idea of me creating some department heads, we would need to talk about who would be the head of which department. So that's what this is about.
So,
Number 9.
are we comfortable enough here as a council to just open?
I think so, if you don't mind saying something in front of the whole room. I mean, the people that are here.
No,
Oh, well, I'm going to try not to. Hold on. What, are you thinking that we're not done with 8?
Oh, no, if that's where, I didn't, just hadn't heard that we were not.
Yes, I had. I said, let's move on to 9. So,
So here's my concerns. I mean, I understand that, the council can't make every decision. But for me, it's important the mayor understands that the council's will is what the mayor acts on. It's not the mayor says, this is my vision, I'm running with it, and I don't care what the council thinks. So for example, since we're, this part-time person that we hired,
mhm.
it doesn't do a person as much as a seat. Those monies were allocated by the council for a deputy clerk position. And I feel like that was circumvented by hiring a personal assistant and didn't have to get the approval of the council to do it.
Mhm.
And I know for a fact that at least 3 of us contacted and asked you not to do that until we had a chance to discuss it. And we had a work meeting last month. We spoke to it, and we had an opportunity to speak to it.
Mhm.
So a decision was made outside the council. That's my concern, why this ordinance means something to me. But then we come back to the table where the mayor checks with the council on things that have input to the town. Because I've got a lot of constituents that call and say, who approved the position to be hired? Where are those funds coming from? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
answer that, but the council didn't get a chance to discuss it with you. The decision was made unilaterally. The same with I understand the gravel riding, the bike thing.
Mhm.
And I understand that decision's been made. Again, the council didn't have a chance to discuss that. It was just, this is what happened, and all of a sudden it's been done. That's my concern. As long as we can discuss it, even if I would love to see this ordinance pass. They didn't, it's not the end of the world, but we discuss it. But when things move forward without the council, that's when I get you. Because I feel like we all have to use the public, and it isn't right for the mayor to just make decisions without checking the council, and especially when it has to do with funds. The procurement policy will address that. Those are my concerns.
Okay. Well, that's fine. I would have responded, you said I didn't have to respond, so I
I
won't.
need to get that off my chest.
Okay.
We didn't want to bring that up because we didn't want to embarrass you. Right. So that's why we were hedging on what was asked of us. What were we afraid of? And that's what we're afraid of.
Well, all I will say is if I was hiring someone who was a full-time job that was making some incredible amount of money, I can certainly understand. But this is a part-time job that was just an assistant to me that I actually had told you guys in December that I had planned to, that when we met in December, we asked what I
But-
wanted to do, and I
But this
said that.
position, you already have someone hired that could do
Yes.
that position. And she's sitting right over
Yeah,
there.
no.
And her name is Crystal. And she's clerk
Oh.
and she's recorder.
No,
And she
no,
could
no.
do all those things for you
No.
that someone else could.
Job description, and I went through and I don't have it because I left it home, it seems to be a null and void part. But, there were a lot of those things that were listed that are actually Crystal's job. And I just, again, we're just letting you know that that is what part of it was for me, was this job that was created. It's like you're bypassing a system that is created to keep not only Crystal's job safe, but also the confidentiality of the town. There are different sworn duties that Crystal is to do that nobody else is supposed to do. There's meetings and grants that should be attended, grant meetings that should be attended not only by your assistant, but also by Crystal, who's going to be the one facilitating and helping to make sure that those grants go through. There's things in that job listing that are sworn position jobs and they're Crystal's position. And so when you can discuss that with any of us, a lack of communication does create animosity, it creates fear, which is what Kent Peterson was asking us what might that be. You've got to communicate. If you would like communication and full trust from me, you told me at one time, a long time ago, when you hired me back to be a deputy clerk, and I said, why don't you want this office to succeed? And you said, well, because I don't trust you.
I said that?
You did. This is a long time ago. And so I'm bringing that to a point to say, if we're going to talk points, let's talk about that. There's a lack of communication.
Okay.
And when there's lack of communication, we need to remember that there are 5 of us who have a complete love of this town and want to work it together. And in our last meeting, I don't know if you heard it, but she said I so many times and not we. So there's things like that that fall into this. It's not just a fear tactic or a fear or what are we afraid of. It's what's been shown so far.
Well, my vote, I would have voted against having a second person. If you would have said, I want to hire a deputy clerk, I would have voted for it because we had already allocated the funds for that. But to me, it has less to do with the hiring side. I don't see the need for a personal assistant, but it's done, it's over, whatever. For me, it's answering to constituencies saying, we set aside money for a deputy clerk, and those monies will be rerouted by the mayor being allowed to hire somebody for the position. Does that make sense? I know that she's doing a lot of this herself, I'm sure she will do a job. Not over the town for 100%, I'm not concerned about that, it's just what we are presenting to the public, and we don't sit down and discuss it. And that's very important. Even if Paul and maybe you completely disagree on the use of grants and whatnot, I can be brought around with the discussion with things. I am open-minded with this stuff, but I gotta be involved, because if I'm not, then I start to say, I'm just gonna vote no, because they don't keep on. It becomes, we start pitting against each other. That's one of the
Okay. So what do we think about this procurement policy?
Can I give you a little bit of background?
Yes.
Please.
Just for the benefit of the council, I discussed this with the mayor. In my experience, the town size that we are, we don't have the budget and with the benefit of the size of employees. And so it becomes incumbent upon the council to take the role oftentimes of what you normally see in bigger cities, department head. Whether that be the Public Works Department or whether that be Parks and Recreation Department or the, Water Department or whatever it may be, or, just public facilities. What I have seen work well is, and I've seen it in 2 municipalities that I represent, is that the council gets together and they divvy up, and Mayor referred to it as department head, but I would say it's probably the first step, if you want to call it a department or a section, you look at what the line items are in your budget, where expenditures are happening. And really, that's what your responsibility is. And you can take everything that's like time and you want it together and say, this is a department or this is a department. But you're over those types of things. And what I find helpful, just as if in a bigger municipality, the head of the power department is going to have a budget of X number of dollars. And if it needs to go and buy some, 20 transformers, but it's well within his budget, and he can make that expenditure without having to take it to the council. Now, I'm trying to move this down into a macro level for you guys and say, look, if Leroy, for instance, is over streets, and the county comes to Leroy and says, hey, we're going to be chip sealing here, do you want us, we'll have our county crew, and it's only X number of dollars. If you were to go and hire it out to a private party, it could be 2 or 3 times that amount of money, but it's going to require $8,000 to do 2 roads that really need a good chip seal on or something like that. If that is within the streets budget, and it's less than $10,000, Leroy would have the authority to authorize that without having to come to big discussions necessarily. What it also does is that it makes all of you much more involved in the budgeting process because you're looking out for the areas that you're over to. And I would suggest you guys pick things that you're passionate about and doing that too. Sometimes there will be projects that might have overlap or join, and maybe it's Paul getting with Gene and saying, okay, if we did this, could we, storm drain or trails, maybe could we take 30% of that cost to do this project from parks and trails and group it with Leroy on a road project too, something like that. What it does, it gives, I see a lot of time spent in this council meeting over expenditure of little things that would never come before a city council or even a bigger town council. And I agree, I appreciate that we do that sometimes, and sometimes it might be super refreshing, but I don't know if it's the most efficient. So that's where when I talked with the mayor about this, I said, if you like, I'm happy to show you or kind of draft for you a version of how we do it in some other smaller municipalities where the council basically has to be these departments. So that's the background behind this.
Mayor,
Yes.
I personally like what you and the attorney's done on this. The only thing I would add would be if we have some items out for bid that they're closed bids, they come into the clerk and they're opened.
So,
Right now, it requires any procurement of like for a project or something like that, if it's over $100,000, we have to require proper bid opening. That requires anything between 10,000 and 100,000 comes to council, and it should be, unless there's some exceptions, we should be getting that. But there are some exceptions. Sometimes if there's only or the type of thing that we're trying to procure, because it may be labor, but it could easily be jungle gym or park or something like that too. And we may have a Lifetime store here and they're close and there's no shipping and all these other things that there might be some exceptions to going out and trying to get through bids on things too. So that's what this does. It creates, if it's under your kind of jurisdiction or what we call supervisory authority, then you can, and it's within your budget. You can't approve something that puts you in a negative for your budget. So
Gene, if you're over parks and you want to put in a big jungle gym that's going to be $15,000 and you only had $10,000 left in your, well, first of all, it'd be over the $10,000 limit, but it also puts you in the negative. It'd have to come to the council because they would have to know you guys are going to have to do an amendment to your budget to move something from someplace else to do that.
Okay, but I think what Leroy was saying, if I'm right, is if I'm looking at the 3.
Yes.
So I'm assuming there is like, you would want something added in. Is this the section where you were saying you would want something added? Says, the bids would need to be, sealed and then open to the town council meeting, somewhere in here.
Town council, right.
Okay. Or opened by town council. What do you think about that? Just adding it somewhere right in there? Okay.
And these are for procurements between 10,000.
And 100,000,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
I definitely echo that. I think in a small town where we have a few contractors that compete with each other, it's just good practice to have everything sealed.
I agree.
Can I ask some clarifying questions
Uh-huh.
to the attorney? Because he's really busy when we get all those.
Okay, I just want to say one thing before you do that. In number 1, where it said the mayor with the advice and consent of the town council shall assign, I was thinking we should change the word shall to may, just in case that a future mayor may not want to do department heads. Instead of saying they shall assign, or am I misinterpreting that line?
Well, to make it work, there has to be assignments, has to be. And I think you'll notice that it says in there, once the assignments has been made, it remains until the council acts to. So the way I would envision it, you have a work meeting, you guys would talk about grouping or congregating budget items into categories of supervision.
Right.
And say, who wants this, who wants that? And she'll get the feel for how to do that, and then she'll say, okay, at your next council meeting, based on our work meeting, I'm gonna recommend that we appoint Jean having supervisory authority over this, and this, and she names it all off and then asks for who, now, is there a motion for a consenting vote to approve this? The council has confirmed or consented her appointment. That's the standing, that's your position. Meaning that even if your term expires, the person would come in to take those positions unless and until the council wants to shift things up. And frankly, I do see that sometimes. I see in municipalities that are represented, someone gets, I'm ready for a change. I don't want to do mosquito thing. Anymore, or I don't want, no foul there. But, it just.
Okay, I just don't want any subsequent mayor to read this and feel that they absolutely feel like they have to do this if they don't want to.
Okay, so then
That's what I'm
how to
concerned
do
about.
it?
Well, that's why I wondered
So
if we
you're
said
saying
may.
the mayor would then go back to everything comes to the council.
Yeah, but I just wondered if the way this is written, I just don't want another mayor to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to assign these department heads when maybe they just don't want to. They want to be all powerful and keep all the power to themselves or whatever.
Heath, the way I read that under B1, it says the mayor with advice and consent of the town council shall assign. So that requires the mayor to assign those department heads. And I think what Jean is saying is just change it to may, and then she can make that decision as to whether she wants to assign it or not.
And then any subsequent
And
mayor.
then in future, mayors come in and they can make that decision or not.
Okay, then.
It doesn't have to be mandatory.
We were feeling like this is mandatory.
It is a challenge.
Yeah, right.
Speaking between three terms.
Yeah, shall is mandatory.
But my thought and my concern is that this kind of process doesn't work if you're going to leave open-ended some
Oh, I see.
areas.
Okay.
And if the mayor can kind of mothball by saying, I'm not going to do this, then, it doesn't necessarily default to the mayor, but it defaults back to the council and everybody, which the ordinance doesn't necessarily contemplate. It's kind of got to be in all order. That's the way I drafted this. Shall.
Okay,
You should say shall anyway. Mayor comes in a seat, councilman in a seat, we all know what's expected.
Hey, and if this doesn't seem to work out, you always can pass through the ordinance that says we go back to the ordinance and talk about every $500 expenditure for new lawnmowers.
But this is set up, this should already be set up for the next mayor. So it's already, should be.
Yeah, I just didn't-
Everything we're finished with, it should be a lot way
I would hope so.
clean.
I would hope so, but I just didn't want a subsequent mayor to say, what on earth did you do to me? You know.
If Gene's done, I have some follow-up questions.
Okay.
Okay. That's what I was gonna, you go first and maybe it'll be the same questions.
So I just am trying to understand, so town council approved that by procurement after the fact on the following items. So looking at, item 6B, pre-approved that by procurement after the fact. And I just want to understand these points, and I'm marking them all points. Where it says that there's less than 3, we not change that to moving contractors, we want to get a bid from, that there's less than 3, and it says we can just pre-approve, right? So that, we put that where it says it's less than 2, so that people, they still have to put in a single bid.
As a state procurement unit, which the town is, we can single source, or if there's limited sources, we can choose without putting a bid. Are you wanting to go to, you want to limit it to 2? Is that what you're asking?
Let's say, not pointing fingers at anyone else, but completely theoretical, we have a mayor that happens to run it. And we have somebody else in the town who runs the same kind of company. If we eliminate the bid system from the mayor, you don't have to take the company, you put in your own bid and just accept it. By making it be a closed bid for anything more than 2 and over instead of 3. We're a small town, believe it or not, that kind of thing does happen.
Well, it still requires the consent of council. It's
Even
not-
though it's not a closed bid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at,
I just need clarification, because I didn't understand.
So you're talking about item A?
I'm talking about C1, referring from 6B. 6B says the town council approved to ratify procurement after the fact.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's saying these are exempt. These are things that are exempt from the procurement policies. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're on, you're on.
Yeah, 'cause I'm
C1.
I'm looking at 6A, B, and C, and there's an and, so it requires all 3 things to be present. And one of those is the council approving. Pre-approves or ratifies them.
So that's all 3 of those.
I think
Yeah,
this,
it's
I think this
and.
is answering your, this is providing what you were concerned about.
Yeah, it requires all 3.
It does, it's, shall require the town to solicit 3 bids, town council to pre-approve or ratify, and procurement to be awarded. If we deem that there are 2 that are both qualified and competent, then it's to go to the lowest.
I was linking the 2 where I shouldn't. If you go to C1, that's where my question was. C1 says, in the following instances, the town is exempt and need not comply with the identified portions of procurement policy, and it says, it is not required if the procurement is used or previously items, or is provided by less than 3 competent qualified providers.
Yeah. But notice that it says, we don't have to comply with 6B, 6A, which is the 3 bid requirement. So,
And then the second question on that same group, what is the design proficiency? Can you give an example where that would be something that would bypass this?
This is C3.
yeah, design bid contracts are kind of the new bubble thing in Utah. UDOT uses design bid contracts
What is
all the time. So what you can do is you can retain a professional engineering firm, or they they can also be, as long as they have a certain level of contractor licensure, they can be the design bid official. And what you do is you retain them, and they go out and hire the contractor. So you may award a professional design bid contractor, Rosenberg and Associates Engineering, or civil engineering from here in town, and it's to build a road or a water line system through the city, or a water line through the city. And they will go out and they will design it. They will go out and get bids and hire a contractor, and they don't necessarily have to comply with all the requirements of the procurement code, especially if it's over $100,000. It is a streamlined way of doing it, and that's the way the UDOT gets a lot of their roads built rather quickly. And it's partly because these people with those qualifications, they know who are competent bidders, competent contractors, who can do it, who has the wherewithal, who has the crew and the expertise to do certain things.
And that is the same, I guess, in C5, it's the same idea. Legal, county administrative services.
Yeah, those are very specialized. And so the council needs to require who they feel like they need to ascertain who they feel is competent and trustworthy, and all the different aspects for their accountant, for their attorney, those types of things. And so necessarily going out and getting 3 bids and saying, well, they all look competent, none of them have been this far. They all have an active license, and they all have malpractice insurance. I'll just take the lowest one, and the guy is a criminal defense attorney, he doesn't have any municipal law experience. You guys, that's where any certain types of professional services, and that's straight out of Utah Place.
I was just not understanding, so we got more of, say we wanted to have an HR firm come in and look at our policy manual, as an example. Did that go around this, or was that something that you would still discuss? Would you ask a question?
It's only limited to legal, county, or administrative services as well. And so I guess administrative services could possibly be the job.
So then I guess my last question, and I'm done, because this answers everything else. This all falls within the budget, right? So we set the budget, let's say we set the budget for $10,000 for this year. Now, let's say we set it for $20,000 for this budget, and she takes and spends $10,000, then she can come back and actually spend the next $10,000. Is that what that's saying, or is that something that, once that pot has been spent, you have to come back to the council to review it?
Yes, so it says right here, in 3 talks about by county administrative staff. I mean, if Crystal needs to go out and buy a couple of boxes or reams of paper and stuff like that, it's under $500 and those types of expenditures. But 4 is procurement of up to $10,000 by a town council member does not require the approval of the town council so long as A, the town council member initiating the procurement is the person with supervisory authority over the budget category in which the procurement is made, and B, the procurement would not cause the town department or town budget category for which the procurement is secured to exceed its remaining budget balance for the year.
So she has to work within whatever her budget is.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever department she would be able to say, okay, here's the budget, she's got to work with that.
Okay. Unless some of the questions, I think it's good.
All right, Mayor, I do have some questions. First question is probably dealing with more with contracts over 100,000, but under state procurement law, and I haven't had a chance to look at it, is there a way to require or to promote local preferences for bidders?
Yes.
And I assume then that has to be part of the policy before you can promote.
Well, we basically say that we'll follow the state code, and there are a couple provisions in procurement of public improvement projects where
can be a designation of preference for local bidders.
And that's usually when it goes out to bid, so we don't have to do it in this policy, is what I was
But it
asking.
requires, everything as far as like a bid opening, and categorization of bid categories, closed bids, how you do your bid openings, your awards, and all this type of things.
Okay. Yeah, so nothing we need to change for this then. And then with 6C, that seems to be, and I understand it, if I read it correctly, you're not awarding it to the lowest responsible bidder because you're not requiring that. So you're leaving, you're awarding it to you can award it to the responsive bidder. The problem I have is trying to make that determination. Should we be setting some type of guidelines as to what's going to be qualified and competent? Because the way this reads is you award it to the most qualified and competent bidder. That's responsive, but so you're really awarding it to the responsible bidder, and you only award it to the lowest one is if they're equal. So how do you make that determination as to what's qualified and competent for that particular bid? Do you do that before you go out to bid? But what criteria you're going to look at?
Well, okay, for instance, if you're gonna procure, you're looking to procure a couple of vehicles. Okay. If it's in your department, you probably want to submit, issue an RFP or request for proposals and you get one back from the Ford dealership and one from Steamway Chevrolet. If they respond to your request and you want 2 full-size pickups, baseline, that has sufficient amount of towing capacity, and they got in their proposal gives you that, then they're both responsive and confident. If they tell you that, I think in that situation, then you're looking at probably the lowest of the 2 in that situation. I don't know if I fully, have they been responsive to the RFP? Because you get some people, sometimes you put out an RFP and they won't address some of the items that you want them to propose on. And if they haven't covered everything in the bid, then they're not responsive.
Sean has been raising his hand, so he wants to say something.
He did address it. It's
Okay.
all in the RFP. That's when you determine those, and that's state. I go deal with this all the time with the state codes.
The fact of the matter is, that there are going to be times when we're going to have 3 or 4 bids that are all within a few dollars. We are all very confident, we still have to make a decision. We say what we think is the best for the town, even if it's.
Well, if they're all qualified and competent, you have to go with the lowest bid. Yeah, the question is determining qualified and competent, and it's easy if you've got the RFP on a procurement and it matches that RFP. It's a little more difficult in your situation where they're all not responsive and you're trying to make that
Are you thinking
determination.
like labor and services or
It-
capital improvement?
Yeah, it could be, yeah. Purchases are probably easier, but yeah. But, I think we have some on the agenda today, a paving of a road, and you're trying to make that determination qualified and competent. Or do you just award it to the lowest?
Well, I think you're gonna do a sidewalk. Are they a licensed concrete subcontractor? Do they have a license? If the type of work that you're asking to do requires a license, then obviously that would be one of the requirements for competence. But you're right, Paul, I don't know if there's a way, there is always some subjective in determining competence.
The way I look at it is a person, when you're dealing with competence and qualified, is it a responsible bidder? If you're taking the procurement standard, the lowest responsible bidder, all we've done is put this up front to say, make the determination if they're responsible, and the one that's most responsible gets the bid. That's what I have problems with, is how do you make that determination who's most responsible?
Well, if there are more, what it says is, the procurement is to be awarded to the party who the town council believes is the most qualified and competent to provide the item or service. And in the instance of multiple equally qualified and competent bidders, the lowest bid of the group.
They have to be equal. They're not just saying.
Yeah, if the council felt like there was really no difference, we get into a big project and they're gonna have to provide a bid bond, and then they're gonna have to show their bonding ability to a bond, issue a performance bond for a project. I mean, they're doing that Parkway in Tokerville. That's a $18 million project that city was doing. And one of the things they had to do was to show their bonding ability that they could bond for an $18 million project. And so that cut a bunch of contractors out of the mix from being competent in that situation. We're not necessarily dealing with that here, but
There are plenty of people, anybody who's dealt with this kind of stuff before knows, you're gonna get somebody that bids a little lower than everybody else, but gosh, this is still offer the wrong company, but they have this bad habit of coming back and revising and amending their.
So let's take the procedure that Leroy wanted, where you get the 3 bids and they come in and we open them up to town council meeting. I would assume then, unless it's clear from what the bids were, we will probably have to delay it a month or discuss it at that point, yeah.
Normally, we don't give out requests for bid, not unless we know they're competent. And we've had experience, or we know people that have had positive experience with it. You know, and that's been what I've seen happen since I've been on that council.
Well, I've kind of seen how this goes, and we can, and I'm not worried about the time. I want to make sure we do it right. But I'm all right with proceeding, and we may have to make some adjustments because I see some potential issues there that I'm concerned about. But we can deal with those when they arise. And
We're
then
not
come
gonna
back.
my expectation is that because I wanted us to sit down and also discuss department heads, I was not expecting us to vote on this tonight. I was expecting this to be a discussion and then possibly just to take it to next month.
you can do it either way, Mayor. This sets forth the framework and contemplates there's gonna have to be an assignment done. If you wanted to go, you could, and the next meeting would be.
Because I believe that once we determine the different department heads, we then have to do an ordinance saying this person, or resolution, but it has to be in writing.
I would prefer that to be either well addressed in a motion in the minutes or a resolution. Because that's internally how you guys are gonna handle it. It's not necessarily something that affects public, so it doesn't necessarily have to be an ordinance, it has to be, it should be a resolution.
I'll let you know everybody else does that, because I just can't do it. Everybody else does it.
I think the public procurement policy is similar to this in different county jobs, and I like it. I feel like it's really responsible, and I think it's a good direction that it's headed for town. So I'm okay with it. I didn't have a question.
I like it, but I agree with the mayor that maybe just put it off 1 month so the public has a chance to look at it, and then they can provide comments before we act on it.
And I think during that, I would just advise, start working on it. Pull out the budget.
Okay, I just have one question before we, see if anybody in the public has anything they want to say. On page 4, we have this section, it's after section C. We get down here, it says 2.03.030, procurement contract / uniform terms and conditions. Then it says, upon awarding a procurement, and I'll skip first off, there's an open parentheses, and I'm gonna get to find the closed parentheses in there. But it says, upon awarding a procurement in section 2.03.030 to a vendor or service provider, blah, blah, blah. Well, this is section 2.03.030. Are we supposed to be referring to a different section there?
The one above.
The one above?
2.0, not 3.0.
Okay, so that should be a two, okay.
Could we maybe before this comes back, we can get what you're saying, idea of what we're seeing. What's kind of
Yeah.
the contract for this?
I've done, well, so what you do is you go out and get bids, they're gonna come back and give you a bid proposal or an estimate. And basically, they ask you to sign it. And you would sign it and just write per terms and conditions, and you hand them our standard terms and conditions. And, you don't, but I drafted plenty of those files, and you can very quickly, how to put it.
Would you guys want to go ahead and vote on this tonight, or?
I'm okay with it.
And Paul?
I don't know if, I always like public view to look at and public perception, and I don't think this was provided on the public notice website, so the public hasn't had a chance to read it. I don't think it's going to be an issue with the public, but I still would like to delay it a week for them to have a chance to comment on it, but that's up to the council.
Anyone here have anything to say on this topic?
One little thing,
Okay.
Carol Boysenall. In light of what happened tonight and how things got hostile and then this got kind of all worked out, I think as you transition to this, I think it seems like a really good thing. But as you transition into it, maybe whenever somebody spends something in their budgets, they can say, just like throw it out on the table and say, hey, I just spent $8,000 on X, Y, or Z in my budget, just so that everybody kind of knows it stays transparent. You know what I mean? So that you know where everybody's spending money. And not that you're holding them accountable, but it just keeps it on the up and up. So nobody feels like somebody's sneaking something off. That's all.
That's a great point to respond to. And I don't know if you noticed on the consent agenda, they approved the checks and invoices. So they get to see the expenditures by budget category given the previous month. And so if Leroy says, Paul, I see a big expenditure in your category. What was that for? Well, we were replacing this. But yeah, it's something the council reviews and approves the checks and invoices. So it is that transparency and check and balance of the council level.
I would just say, we need more council comment. I've heard a couple times tonight about, hostile or guilt meeting. I want everybody to know, I'm a very blunt person, but though I disagree on a lot of political stuff as far as how we work, if either one of these folks are going to call me to need help right now, I'll be there. And I know that it's the same with that. This is in my mind, this is healthy to be. So it's not hostile. I'm not that person, but I know I come across that way sometimes loud and obnoxious. But honestly, I have no harsh feelings or ill will towards anybody.
And I'll second that one of the things that some of us have discussed among ourselves is that as attorneys, we're used to, we have had times where we have gone to court and you're sitting there and your friend is your opposing counsel and you go out and hammer and tongs against each other and the trial's over, you go out and say, let's go have lunch, and you go have lunch. It is that fight and then it's over. So when we get hostile and then we're all okay, it's just, I'm good with it.
Debate can be good.
Debate can be good.
And politics, especially small politics, is
This will be 10 days or 24
Um,
hours. I did this after the budget.
24 hours.
We just put it on 24 hours. That's why.
There are only certain things that require a 10-day advance notice and a public hearing. Under the Open Public Meetings Act, anything that you're going to take action on requires it to be published on the public notice website 24 hours in advance.
So do you feel like where this is a, kind of like a, it's more of a administrative thing, it's a procedure that we have that, though we would love a public comment, that it's not needed, but it's
Not
not
necessarily required,
necessarily.
but
I don't want to say that, I don't want to brush off public comment
So-
with that.
you're gonna find, my response to that is always, the more that the public can see, and the more involvement, the more transparency, the better, so,
Because if we put this off for a month, for more people to look at this, then hopefully next month we could have lined up what you're gonna be, what Leroy's gonna be, what mine would be, and then we could just pass it over to them.
And we have one in place currently, so it's not like.
We have one in place.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
I'll make 02, 03, 0, 02,
So do we need to,
So-
I'm looking at the motion to make it all we do.
Yes, I make a motion that we table ordinance number 2022-06 until next month.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can we get the terms and conditions, what are the terms and conditions to look at? Just get an idea next month.
All right, Misty wants 5 minutes from now, we will return in 5 minutes.
Hey, what car are you in? What are you nice? I know what I did, like, no, it's coming up. Sorry about it. I don't know. You almost hit it. All of a sudden, whatever, you know, I was like, and I just wasn't saying something. I was like, it was like, it was wait, I see it. My wife, thank you. So I was like, it worked out. So it's a good reminder to slow down. So, sorry about that. Oh, yeah, I was just like, I told my wife, there's like 3 inches, and that's like a outer roll. I asked, oh my God, is there that's not mine. I got some candy for you.
Perfect timing. Oh, no, here's somebody else. Sorry. All right. So we're going to get on with item number 10. Oh. We're going to get on with item number 10, discussion and approval of public works improvements in Virgin. And I hope we go through this fast because we spent a lot of time on that last one a lot more time than I thought we would. So let's see how quickly we can go through the rest of this.
Okay, item 1 is improvements to Town Park gravel along Highway 100 West and parking lot near bike ramp. And what had happened here is we originally asked for bids not to gravel it, but to put asphalt down. And then with the change of leadership in the town, the mayor wanted us to stay more like a little community. So instead of putting asphalt down, and what I'm talking about is our park has 3 sides to it. And you come, sides would have been.
Right now, they're just grass and
Right
dirt.
now, there's
Yeah.
grass. And what brought this up was that one time the sprinkler systems were on the outside of the fence. And the prior mayor moved those sprinkler systems on the inside of the fence because they were causing the fence to deteriorate and rust. And so they moved them on the inside. So the problem we have now between where the road is and the fence is in grass. And that grass is going to die this coming summer. So the previous mayor wanted to put asphalt there from the road up to the fence. And the current mayor, which I agree with, it keeps the small town atmosphere, we decided to go with gravel. We were only able to find one bidder, and he is very competent, Bud Lee and Sons Construction, to do the gravel. And that would cost $29,080. And what he's doing is he's going to cut the soil down 4 inches and then gravel it, with it slowly sloping from the road down to where you have the grass. And he's going to set a perimeter there between where the grass is and the gravel to keep the gravel from going in. The bid when we were looking at putting asphalt was $47,250. We do have impact fees to pay this $29,800.
So is this going to be out of the road funds or the park funds?
It comes out of park funds.
Okay.
Or it could come out of road funds. We
Okay.
have it neither, but I would think park funds.
Any discussion, you guys? Do you
I
want
just
it to
have-
just stay unchanged? Or are you okay with the gravel or?
I have a question, and I'm assuming, and I hate to assume sometimes, but from what Leroy said, that it's coming out of the park impact fees, so we have sufficient impact fees to pay for it.
My question would be, was this identified as a project in our capital facilities project plan?
No, I don't
That was
believe
my
it.
next question, but
If not, we shouldn't be using.
Until it's in a capital facilities plan, okay? I'm pretty sure it's not in the capital facilities plan.
No, it's not.
Okay. So basically, we have to just amend the capital facilities plan to include this, and then we just bring it back for a vote. Yes?
Correct.
Yes, okay.
and hence,
Okay, so then we will push that one until we, I don't remember, I don't see that
Item
one.
2 is improvement along Highway 9, and we don't have any bids on that at this time, so that we're not even going to talk about it.
Okay,
Okay. Item 3, improvements at the corner of 700 West and 150 South. There's potholes down there. Fall, we contracted with Interstate Rock to do 620 50 South to pave a gravel road. And we started up, the bid was for 40 feet. That to 30 feet, and the bid came in roughly $200,000. Because we've decreased that, it's probably going to come in for less than the 200,000. 180. And that 180 would include $5,000 for them to go and fix that corner. So $5,000. And so what they're going to do is they're going to take out part of the road. And when the road was already committed last year, they will take the part of that road out and finish that corner. We have a real problem on that corner. 2 of the turnoff valves are on a spot where cars are running over them. And in fact, some cars even ran over a steel post we put in there. And we're concerned about that because it can damage those valves. And that would be included in that to pave around those valves to protect them. And that's just a matter of information. We're using the budgeted funds that were budgeted in the budget, $200,000 to do that road, and we probably won't even spend that amount.
Is that also something that needs to be in your capital facilities plan?
No, if it was previously budgeted money, so
I assume so. That bid came from while they were putting the road base
Yeah, I
down.
was gonna say, I thought it was gonna be part of this, I thought it was part and parcel of the.
No, they didn't do that. And for us to think about, upgrade the fire hydrant. When we put in the meters that report directly to our computers, we don't have to go out and read meters. We actually were able to charge our poor citizens more money because we were getting an accurate reading of the meters. We also found out that some were losing water. There was leaks between the meter and their houses. We were able to identify that and actually have saved the process also. And this upgrade to fire hydrants costs $2,500 a hydrant. And what it is, it's a device that goes on between the top of the hydrant and the bottom, and it reports any leaks with that hydrant. And to cover the town, it would take about 5 of them at $2,500. So this is just something for the council to think about and to get public comments maybe next month. And it would take about 5 of them through the town. This would alert us to small leaks before we had a major leak that might cause more damage to the road base or to properties. And it identifies the leak within 50 feet of where the leak is. Now, we don't have to do this. It's just something for us to bring up to consider. It might go into our capital improvement plan that Paul and I could work on for next year. But it's just something I felt we needed to be informed about.
Does this program talk to our current program? So are they?
Yes,
So will they?
that's what I understand. They are compatible.
I don't know.
You're talking water.
The water meters,
Water
that's
meters, yeah.
that was awesome.
It's been a couple years, but I remember the last report I saw, a couple of years ago, said that the town is losing from its system, possibly revenue, so it's like 18%. Yeah, it's a marginal.
Before these new water meters.
Well, it's just leaks in the ground. Maybe these would help. Of course, we might turn on, it just says, yeah, these, will take you to 2 miles away.
The more you can have these, you can zone it, so you can see. Those can read between 2 areas and identify if you have long, big, expansive runs between 2 hydrants and have that type of sensor in it, then it becomes a little bit, not as beneficial to you because you know it's somewhere between here and this mile. But Tokerville did that and they love it.
Yeah.
And it was more time to wait.
This would also tell us, you know, if a contractor goes and opens up one to use water and doesn't get one of our meters. Yeah, and of course, that never happens here in Virgin, of course.
May I add to that?
Yes.
The manufacturer of this monitor has volunteered to show up at a town meeting, discuss the product, tell you the ins and outs about it, you know, or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay, the last item is improvements on the tennis ball court at the older park and turn it into a pickleball court. And we have a lot of people that enjoy playing pickleball. So we just thought that was something we should really look at. We have 3 bids. One of them from Stout Concrete. And he gives us 2 options. And option number 1 would be $35,660. And you would actually be putting in posts that could be removed. You know, if we wanted to let people play tennis in that again, or to be removed so they could play basketball with the hoops. And the other bid, if you didn't remove them, would be for $34,500, and then the post would be cemented into the concrete. This is the bid I'd like to recommend. I'll go over the others with you. The reason I want to recommend it is we know that Stout Concrete does wonderful work. They stand behind their work. We've had experience in the town with lots of things that they have laid. Plus, they're putting a material that it's a resurfaced pickleball court material that is, other bidders didn't do that.
It's sport court.
It's a sport court, that's what it's called. The second bid I'd like to discuss is from KC Contracting, and all they're doing is replacing the existing concrete. And that bid is for $60,000. Stout is going over it and basically covering all the, not cracks, they're actually lines that are put in the concrete. The last one is from Precise Pickleball Courts, and it's for $8,835. They don't guarantee the surface, and they're putting a paint down which would disappear eventually and would have to redo it. Any questions from the council?
So what's this bid from Bud Lee and Sons? Is that part of Stout's bid, or is that?
No, that was one of your.
No, that's for the park. So that's not included in this. Yeah, it took me a minute to try to figure out what you're talking about.
Sure. Public comment on that. Since all these projects may be evaluated, I'm sure there are a number of projects that could be done. It would be helpful to see a list. I would wonder what could be done instead of including this.
So it comes back to my capitals improvement list that you'd like to see, but yes, I am. I am, although I know this was talked about at the December meeting, so it was really something that's been ongoing for about 3 months.
Yes, John.
Just a quick comment, about every weekend, there's a group that does a little mini tournament. So it's being utilized for pickleball already. I think it's a great idea.
Go down, go back up, and they're there. There's only kids, basketball, or something.
Cameron Spenlove. So I had a couple comments. The fire hydrant things. I think you better investigate and make sure that they are compatible with our fire hydrants, because I know the one by my house was put in 15 years ago, and it was bought used from other city that had gotten rid of it to upgrade to a new fire hydrant. So a lot of ours are really old hydrants, even by old standards. And then with the gravel, it would be nice if that gravel wasn't crushed gravel. Yeah. Yeah, so if the gravel wasn't crushed, so it wasn't sharp.
That's for their barefoot feet. I promise, sharp rocks don't walk with their feet. Thank you, Cameron.
Okay, so, Paul, you were talking about the capital improvements plan with regard to the.
Oh, no, I was just echoing Wanda's comment that we needed it on the CIP. So I was making another plug for the CIP.
Like this, I would keep them getting solar. I mean, it's nice because people do like the basketball school as a kid.
Yeah.
There's
Locking mechanism.
a way to secure it.
Yeah.
So you can keep it multifunctional.
So these would be the park, with park impact fees, so is, was this in the budget anywhere?
It is not in the prior budget.
But we have a project for park improvements. So
Yeah. It's,
if we're doing improvements to the park, convert it to 2 pickleball courts or something like that, probably fall.
yeah, we can make up to 3 pickleball courts easily
And that's,
in that space.
okay, so I'm going to bring up something that is near and dear to your heart.
Oh, really?
The Utah Outdoor Rec Program. And the deadline to apply is March 15th. And it just has to be, by the way, the money comes from, all the money that goes into the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant Program is money that is taken from taxes on school bills. And that funds the entire grant, and they've got millions in this grant program. And pickleball courts are one of the big things people will get grants from here. And it just has to be something that is outdoors, something that residents will use, and we can apply. Well, March 15th is the deadline. March 18th is the deadline for this. And so we would be able, if we get a grant, that's up to 50% of what the cost is. And it is done where the way it is works, we pay everything and then they send us
They
a check
reimburse.
after the fact, they reimburse us for the 50%. So I would like to go ahead and apply for a grant to use, to apply for this. So I want to let you guys know that. This thing, well, I tell you what, I will let you have it. Oh, you know what, we mark the one that's, because there's got 4 different grants, I'll show you this, I'll mark the one.
Just look, well, I'm not against grants, they just have strings attached to all, and I've actually seen that in communities since she's marketed that. When I was living in Rio, they had a small program that everybody could test. And so one time I'm talking with a guy at a small station, I said, after we started this program, did we have before we got clean air? He said, we never had dirt here. The feds came in and said, you take state funds or state federal funds for your roads, you don't implement this program. That's my problem with grants. There's quite often strings attached that can be detrimental to a town or society.
Read it to your heart's content and let me have it back by March, before March 18th. Okay. You would like to do the gravel?
And the pickleball court. It agrees with
I have no objections. I like the idea of the pickleball court or that gravel, except that improvements, hopefully subject to apply grant. And I'm going to make a motion that on item number 10, we approve item number 5, improvements on the tennis and pickleball court, that we award the bid to Stout Concrete. Stout Concrete,
Stout Concrete
the
Inc.
one with the, the removable poles.
I'll second that.
Option one.
Yes, option 1.
I'll second that.
So,
Oh, she's putting it out.
subject to potentially applying for a grant. Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, all right. Item number 11. Discussion and possible approval of ordinance 2022-03 and ordinance amending chapter 8, section 8.34, curbs, gutters, and sidewalks. Any discussion? I know, Paul, you had some issues
No, I don't.
or something to say about it. Did you not?
I listened to the planning board discussion. Thank you to the town attorney. I like the change on here. I think that's critical to make this work. And the way I interpret that, Heath, is that let me grab the statute quickly on how we have it. Because this is changing to include shoulders or concrete edge protections from N. If the town engineer determines that it needs both, that still would work. So long. So I thought that was a good change. And the only other comment I have is something to think about on all the next is when I read up above in the colors, I don't have a problem with the strikeouts, but when we do the colors and we don't do an underscore, I'm concerned about, one, I get lost. Two, I'm used to that drafting, legislative drafting way of doing things. And if somebody's colorblind in the public, they can't see what's new and what isn't. So,
Thank you. You'd
So
rather
I-
have it colored, you'd rather have it underscored
then color.
than colored.
Yep. And I think that would be beneficial from a ADA standard, but I have no problem with this change now that we have town attorney in there.
Well, then I will make a motion that we.
Public comment.
Oh, sorry. Any public comment? Thank you, guys. I'll take that as a no. All right, so I make a motion, we approve ordinance number 2022-03, an ordinance removing the requirement for curb and gutter from chapter 8 and removing outdated language.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 12, discussion and possible approval of ordinance 2022-04. An ordinance, chapter 16, Ray conditional uses. Any discussion? Have any objections to this change in definition
And in general liability, this is in chapter 16, where been added general liability insurance coverage as part of this CUP process. No discussion?
So public comment,
What?
public comment.
Yes, any public comment? Well, all right. Okay, then. I'll take a motion from someone.
I propose that we accept item 12, ordinance 2022-04, an ordinance amending chapter 2 definition of general liability insurance and chapter 16, section 16.16 and 16.18 regarding conditional uses.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. 5, an ordinance amending Chapter 2, definition of various lighting provisions. And I just realized that I did not made the motions and who seconded when we just did these last 2 ordinances. So I apologize for the record to Darcy.
Listen to the tape. I had a number of concerns, and they were expressed at the planning board meeting. But what we've done is we've taken a list of definitions and to approve those without the coordination of what it does to the rest of the body of the ordinances. It's creating some potential loopholes, how we define things in this piecemeal fashion as to how they apply to the substance of the ordinances in the code. So I have that problem by itself. Plus, I think it's exacerbated by the fact that the definitions of all these lighting definitions are now applicable not just to the lighting, outdoor lighting code, but all the land use code. So it's even more critical that we understand what that effect is. So I don't like that process. I do have a question because I went back when I was doing the research on the capital improvement list I ran across in January. We changed January 2021, so approximately 13 months ago, we changed the definition of lumen. And now, 13 months, we're now eliminating it. And that's the problem I see with what goes on when we start doing definitions. So we already, we also did that with, also on that same day, ordinance 2021-12, created a definition of air. Now, we're not changing the definition of luminaire, but that would have been an opportunity to make the corrections of what we're doing here. And then also then in June of changes to outdoor lighting changes. We didn't make changes to the definition, but surely that would have been the time to make changes to some of those definitions that apply to that particular substance of those particular changes. So I don't like the process. Holes we're going to create in the process. I think the better way to do this is to vote, and since this is pertaining to lighting, is to start to implement what we've heard over and over. It's time to start moving forward with certification with the International Dark Skies Association. And so my preference would be to hold off on this ordinance bring back a resolution next month that directs that we look for certification, because part of the certification process is that they're going to be advising us on the ordinances, and it will prevent us from going back again and making more changes.
Appreciate where you're coming from on the changes constantly happening, the light things been a nightmare since the beginning because of the way it was written initially, that's the very archaic stuff. For example, the table that we got here that had things and we're saying we have to use this type of light code. Some of those light codes don't exist anymore. We go from incandescent to full scale and over black. I love our specs. At the same time, that shouldn't rule, in my opinion, our outdoors. Running ordinances need to be replaced to provide safety. So I hear a lot of comments about, not just for one somebody, but comments about when we do next, we get a police report, this how we all the lights and things like that. It's kind of partial, nice guy, partial. We're just gonna go back and forth. As far as moving these definitions around, part of it was we have a lot of ordinances written in the definitions, which is and number two, if you try to do a whole thing all at once, it never gets that page ever. And watch again and again, you large ordinances and it just sits there and spins, because there's so many different things. I do agree, we need to be saying, all right, we're going to touch linear here, we need to go for the rest of the ordinances and get in those places that it touches. I totally agree with that. But I don't think you can do massively. I certainly not a fan for making our planning ordinance something that is ruled by the dark sky. I appreciate dark skies, but I'm not that. So.
I agree with Paul, only my issue is different from yours. My issue is that by changing some of these definitions and before we then go change the ordinance, the part of the town code where this applies, we are creating somebody who gets grandfathered in this time period where they can have some light that ultimately is going to be disallowed once we go in and change the ordinance, the section of the code that then refers back to that definition. In that meantime, somebody's installed some lights that ultimately shouldn't have been installed if we had done the code at the same time where you did the definition and you did the code. That's my concern, is people being grandfathered in just because I see in the development where I am, I have seen 4 houses go up that I look at the lights and they are not shielded and they go straight out. And I'm like, how is this okay? And so anyway, it's that kind of thing.
Can I just throw this out? So this is one of the fun challenges of my job. We just did a house right next to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ordinance says it has to be down with the shade. So the guy has lights that have a little cap on top, and it's the big glass one.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't have a light bulb in it, it has an LED, it's like a lead bulb, so it is down lit and it is shielded, but it has this big glass bulb, and
It looks like it's not.
There's all these challenges of trying to meet that ordinance.
Okay.
Just because the changes.
Yeah, I have yet to see the lights on at night so that I can see what they're going to look like. It just looks like they're going to be blinding.
Okay. The other copies of those we have, the ordinance does not, the ordinance has that it's a little bit exempted. You're exempted if it's under certain rules.
Mhm.
So if they put in the right kind of bulb when I come by with the inspection, and as soon as I walk away, they change it, then our hands are tied against the town. How do you you start rolling up and knocking on people's door, I personally don't like getting shot, so. We see the problem.
That's where my biggest fear is just kind of foundation of your two comments. I can step outside, it's honestly all the houses right here, and I can get probably swear on the don't qualify under our ordinance. But when we start messing with that, the dark skies, we all love our dark skies. Walking out of my porch is my favorite. In the middle of the night, there's stars.
Yeah.
But we've got to have a calculated between safety and dark sky. We also have to find a way to grandfather or find a way to help fund those people that are, that can't just walk in a place where they're old seated, they're on fixed things. We're out of town, we're blue mirror violation, blue mirror violation. So we need to, the landlords is such a nightmare. And I've tried, I made an official note, but you guys have heard it before. It's a nightmare. It's hard to make it work. But I agree with Paul a little bit. Some of these changes we can find out, we need to level it out.
Also to add to what you say, grandfathering has its limits.
Yeah.
We come together as families and say, all right, grandfathering, but you have until this date. That is legal to do, but again, we all want to get you voted in on decisions.
And if you want to pass that four-person, not four-person method, means that you go back to them. But someone specifically, if you want something in there, you know, I don't know, I will send out if that's going to be the basic fixtures. It's on my home, I'm gonna have to replace. Now, if I use a complete fixed income that was just what I brought in after retirement, I would be able to go out and fix it. So our grandfathering in, even putting a limit on it, we need to find a way. I know that there have been communities that have gotten funding and assistance to help the people go toward these, different dark skies. And in Springdale, they would get some help to help. Some of the, it was, I wish I could describe what I read. But they got some funding and help to get toward this dark sky that they wanted to go for. They actually used it for the burden on the citizens that were already there with their houses that are like 7 years.
And that's being encouraged and protected too. So
Exactly.
the mayor that implements a system that says, all right, there's gonna be some sort of bonus or tax break or something where you can bring your lights to this level, versus the one that says, all right, enforcement, I go out there and bust all my constituents so that I can never run again. Because that's really what will happen if we start going around telling everybody in town, oh, I looked at your light bill, it's 120 watt, you can only have 50 watt, you gotta go do that. That doesn't make you real popular.
I always like the carrot for,
I'm absolutely sure all of you have read the lighting ordinance recently. This is definitions. I have those within our ordinances to make sure that will come back again this next month. That to not have that included. Other than that, we're just to clarify really what these are. These are about definitions tonight, and I could, if we wanted to, we could go over each definition, or you could look at them and read them. This looks like a definition, and that's all it's doing is defining. On top of all that, the lighting ordinance definitely, absolutely needs revision. Me with my background in lighting, in that industry, I still got a sister that's been doing that for 25 almost. She's helped me put stuff together. I've gone through all the dark sky stuff a lot through all that. I've looked through their ordinances. I've a lot of cities and towns and see what they've done. I helped Spring clarify their ordinance. So without understanding lighting, it's hard to say what's good. Definitions though. So I wish I could say just trust me that these are very good. I spent a lot of time coming up with these. If you don't trust me, then go ahead and vote that we look at it again. But I'm pretty sure that they're going to come back to you pretty much exactly the same way. If we want one definition at a time, I can do that as well. But then we have 160, a little bit of give and take.
Yes, Kevin.
Comment?
Yes.
You guys, I have tried so hard to find fault with Sean's definition rewriting. So when I voted in favor of this 2 weeks ago, I had fine-toothed it for a month, trying to figure out what he was trying to do or what was wrong about it. And this making the definition. Now, I argue with him about who should be making the definition and how important the definition is, or how detailed or simple it should be. We had some comment. I made some comments about that maybe weren't polite the other day. But the point I wanted to make about night sky, which is of course important to me, I freaked out when the two houses were built behind me a year and a half ago. When they finally turned the outside lights on one night, I thought, oh my gosh, I'd been living in the dark pretty much up there. And I thought just regular, legal, dark sky city ordinance lights were way overdone and were driving me crazy. And I was wrong. It was just what I was used to. And I was used to dark. And so the lighting there is just perfect. Now, Ivans has a really good dark sky group that tries to help builders and stuff like that understand Ivan's program. It's not a mandatory above ordinance type of a program. And I think that all of us here, the more I talk to people, especially people who've lived here, they love their dark sky. They don't want it to go away. But there are people that will take it, help someone build something. And so we have to have really good defined rules about what we want. Safety is utmost to me. And I think good dark sky involves good safety. They have to go together. And so I think that can be done. It just has to have, we just have to have a really good concerted effort. And I see it here with everybody. I can see living out in Rio de Sion for the last 5 years. It's got to be terrible, just like I felt up there. Keep the sky dark here. We can make it be people that going to need to be talked to and going to need to have somebody that go around and show the benefits of not having flashing out across their neighbors' backyards just because they want to, or they don't get it, or they just aren't aware. But we can have safety. I'm concerned about downtown lighting safety. And I don't know how the people downtown feel about lights. Probably some on the street at night or feel safe walking down the street. And I don't know what's done there, but I think it can be worked out. Street lights can be really dark sky positive and safe. And there are good ones that can do that. That's
okay. So your point is that our definitions are okay.
It's getting close to 10 o'clock, which means that my dog is probably wanting to go for a
This
walk.
is
So
the last thing on the agenda.
that being said, I have issues with changing definitions when there are things to which they refer. Plato said that let no one unversed in geometry enter here. He was talking about philosophy, but geometry is the basis, which means logic. It is structured in a certain way. You begin with definitions, axioms, then theorems. You change the definition after a theorem's already been. So for example, the definition of a hypotenuse of a triangle is the longest leg in a right triangle. And the square of a hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the square of the other two sides. Theorem proved. Suddenly somebody changes the definition of hypotenuse to being the shortest leg in a right triangle. Suddenly the theorem is broken. And my real concern here, if we want to be very specific, whenever you have a definition, you're defining a set of things. It is simply an is. It's not a regulation, which is a should. A regulation is given a definition, we define a set of things or people or actions. Given those definitions, the following should or should not happen. When you have a definition of something like temporary outdoor lighting, you define a set of lights in town which are subject to certain norms or requirements. The original definition for the temporary outing specifies the illumination of an outside area made by any man-made object located outdoors that produces light by means period of less than 7 days, with at least 180 days passing before being used again. So that's an objective definition that has a metric and a measure. There is no should, it's simply an is. So you can go through and identify whether something is a temporary outdoor light by looking at it and then looking again 180 days later. And if it is or is not still being used, you know whether or not it's temporary. So that defines a certain set. When you change that definition to the new definition, outdoor lighting of temporary or non-permanent nature, typically used for construction, special events, or holidays, that's a set which maybe overlaps the other one, but suddenly we've changed some of the lights for which the should that's in the ordinance that we don't even know what it is. It's not here. Sean promises that those sets intersect or not intersect. But it's a real concern to me that changing a definition undercuts the foundation of the law that it was written, which makes it possibly not just not enforceable, but self-contradictory or contradictory to some other law. Anyway, I'm done with that.
Okay, I will make one point. The section of what you're looking at here, that Crystal has up on the screen, the standard definitions, if you go further down, next page. Next page,
Up at the top.
next page. Go, up, go, back, sorry, you were on the ordinance, there's page 3, where's page 4?
That's.
Here?
That shouldn't be written that way.
No, it
It
should,
should have all
but,
this.
no, it should, but if you see in the actual ordinance, the definition of temporary was left, it was not changed. What you were just talking about, how it's crossed out. What was decided at planning commission last week was that it would not, that temporary lighting definition would not change. So what's in the ordinance is, because you were focusing on that one, that did not change. Except that we accepted all the definitions except that one.
Okay, and I want to stop that, because you make a good point, but here's the way that I look at definitions. So I did when I was helping write a definition. If this definition doesn't apply to every other town in the United States, then it's not a definition, it's an ordinance. So saying 7 days or 180 days, that's an actual ordinance, that's not a definition. Now, I agree with you, I think that before we take it out of there, we ought to make sure that it is in the actual ordinance. The definition should be, in my opinion, something that just says, this is. And it should be applicable in any setting. So if I go to Wisconsin and I look at temporary outdoor lighting, it's the same exact definition. And also stuff I pulled out of the report from a legal site, it would say, this is the legal description of X.
Yeah, I've got a lot of other sites that use exactly this particular wording of 180 days, 7 days. In other places, had a general organization that makes recommendations for land use and land committee. That's the exact same definition.
Okay. Let's put this one to bed, so we can go on.
And it's on 8 o'clock, so let's see. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-05.
Second.
I have a substitute motion.
Okay,
I'd like to make the substitute motion that we table these amendments until April meeting in order for the town to consider in March a resolution that Virgin start the process of becoming a certified international dark sky place by submitting an application.
What's that, Michelle? What do we have in a second? me as a big motion, because I'd like to know what that entails exactly. As far as, because I think that we have to have to meet the train safety, the dark sky, because I know like there was a fire at my neighbor's house, and they couldn't find the other hydrant, so they had to use mine. And then they found the other hydrant. But what would happen if that, I mean, I would scare the heck out of me about like my house that had been burning down and they couldn't find that hydrant. So I think the safety's got to be addressed, number one. And the dark sky, we got to do that because we have to do the dark sky. But how do you find that happy medium? So I need to know, what does the dark sky require? I mean, do we do everything down there so that at like zero lumen? I don't.
Well, this is to apply for that certification, and Helper's already certified, Torrey's certified, Springdale's on its way of being certified. It's a process of 1 to 3 years. And there's many steps in that process that we can take back and say, okay, no, I don't think this is accomplishing the goals that we want for our town. So just because you start the process doesn't mean all of a sudden these ordinances are going to change. We still have a chance as a council to look at those changes and say, okay, and is there another way we can provide this provision and still comply with dark skies? Because as Ken testified to, that there are ways that you can have streetlights that meet dark sky ordinances. And so our master plan, our general plan says we're going to have dark skies. We've been all talking about dark skies. So let's get to the point and see what the citizens of Virgin want and submit the application and start to work towards a dark sky community. Well, see, I think that's up to us. I mean, I agree with you that we can look at programs to go in and fund the purchase of those lights and make it worthwhile for somebody to come in and retrofit their lights to become dark sky. I don't think this going through the program requires that. And at some point, if we get to the point that we don't like it, we can stop that process. But I think we need to move towards that process.
What's the how does it benefit the town to go through that process and to achieve it?
Yes, Kim.
People want it.
I was gonna say,
People want it, plus it, as Ken testified to in the planning commission meeting, we got tourists that want to come to a place that's dark skies. It's going to promote, especially now that we have the RV parks, people are coming here for the dark skies, and it becomes to the point that we're a destination place for the dark skies versus a pass-through community on the White of Zion National Park. That's right in our general plan, that we don't want to be a pass-through community. We want to be a destination community. And one of the things you can do is start to advertise that this is a dark sky community. We're certified as dark sky, and we bring the tourists here to use our facilities that we now have in place.
For the last 4 years, all I've heard where it benefits is to have dark skies. You know, I don't agree with what the public was telling me for the last 4 years and about every meeting the way it was.
I'm not against the dark sky. I think we should hold up ordinances on it, number one. Number two, we have stuff in place, and every new home, every new business that comes in, I check their body data to make sure that it meets those requirements, down in the shield. Beyond that, if we want to do stuff down the road, I find that I don't think we should hold up working on our ordinances for this program.
I've got to say, we
Well, you need a second.
Second on the substitute motion.
So yes, we need a second on the substitute motion, and I don't think we have it, so Doris.
So we have.
There's a motion to approve with a second by.
Can we still do that?
And I'm going to ask the mayor to put that resolution on next, yeah, yeah. I'm asking her to put that on for next meeting.
I'll get some stuff.
Council, I know you got council comment.
Paul, the motion was to approve.
Yes, and I'm going to be with what I said. I think the community's getting tired of all these ordinances that are coming in from definitions. I worry about the loopholes. I think Niles, even though that definition's back in, I think Niles' point was very applicable to this. I don't know.
No,
Yes.
yes, okay. All right, any council comments? Will you read back what the votes were?
The votes were Paul, no, Jean, yes, Jean, no, Leroy, yes, Misty, yes. Any council comments?
So it looks like in the future to put on a resolution about proceeding with the dark sky certification. Doesn't have to be March, it can be April, but let's, yeah. And it's, yeah, that's why, so some point not in March, maybe in April after we get the material. I have some material. But I think it's time that we put it on the agenda and we let the community come in and tell us how they feel about dark skies. And yeah, I think you got a lot of questions that need answered, yeah, and contact the town Satori and help her, because there are already dark sky communities and they can probably tell you what their experiences are.
My council comment is that next month we will have 3 items on the agenda. Because we spend an hour on each one. So, I'm being silly, but next month, we can't have this many items on the agenda. We have 13 items. So. All right, motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Okay.
I had a couple items I thought was important. Yeah.
Sorry, we cut you off.
Yeah.
Everybody go to that. Everybody go to that. What were your comments?
Leroy's got comments.
Oh, wait, hang on. Leroy has some comments.
No, we already voted to adjourn.
I know you already.
We didn't vote, we had 2 votes, we haven't finished the voting of it.
But I just thought there was 2 items that the town and the council needs to know that they're probably not aware of. And number 1 is that we're supposed to every quarter do 48 tests somewhere in town of the level